Hey guys, a big reason why I started the Real Appreciation podcast was not only for the pun, okay, maybe a little, but it was also as a way to be better. And speaking of being better, I have to thank today's sponsor, Dubby. Dubby is the perfect drink if you're looking for a great energy boost without the crash. You should check out Dubby, for real. It's a clean energy drink that keeps you focused and energized, and it doesn't have any of that junk like sugars or artificial dyes. Seriously, it's got nootropics, vitamins, no sugar, 0 calories, no artificial colors, and no maltodextrin. I've been using it and it's been a game changer for me. Plus, I've got a special deal for you guys. Use my promo code REAL10 to get 10% off your order. Just head over to Dubby's website, pick out your favorite flavors, and enter REAL10 at checkout for your discount. Seriously, give it a try and see the difference. Be better with Dubby. Welcome back to another one here on Real Appreciation. I'm David Clair-Bennett, and I still cannot get over the guest we have for you today. One-on-one with Walter Nichols, also known as the dad from Drake and Josh, but more importantly, he is Jonathan Goldstein. Thank you so much for being with us here on the Real Appreciation podcast, and thank you for making Real Appreciation a part of your day. I had the honor of speaking with Jonathan Goldstein, and I cannot thank him enough for agreeing to take the time out of his day to come on the show. We talk about all kinds of things in this episode, like how he was on his shift as a waiter when his agent called him to tell him he got the part of the dad on Drake and Josh. I even got him to do a familiar catchphrase for us that I think everyone who loves Drake and Josh will enjoy. Jonathan also takes the time to tell us about his experience directing 2 episodes of guess what show? iCarly. Did you know that the dad from Drake and Josh directed iCarly? I didn't, and that's coming from a dude whose all-time favorite show is Drake and Josh. Such an incredibly surreal experience this was. Just such a genuine and kind soul he is. But before we jump into the full interview, I wanted to take this time to address something I know a lot of people listening to this are probably waiting for Jonathan and I to talk about, or for me to at least ask him his thoughts on, which is the Quiet on Set docuseries and the Dan Schneider allegations. I just want it to be known that due to the incredibly sensitive nature of those accusations and allegations that were addressed in Quiet on Set, I did not feel like it was in the best interest during this interview to go back in time and discuss things that Jonathan most likely does not even have any knowledge about. And I never want any of my guests to either feel ganged up on, attacked, or pressured to talk about something, let alone something so sensitive. And speaking on this topic, I wanted to take the time to let you know that you are never alone. There truly is hope and help available. You can find it at rain.org, that's spelled RAINN.org, or you can call or text 1-800-656-4673. This is not a sponsorship, this is because you matter. Your voice matters. You matter so much. Never, ever forget that. I also think it's important that we keep the Real Appreciation podcast true to its ultimate purpose, which is positive energy, appreciation, and gratitude. The world is always going to be negative. It is up to you to be the positive. I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I do. Please take a screenshot and share online that you're listening to or watching the Real Appreciation podcast and tag us. Jonathan is on Instagram at Jonathan L. Goldstein. I'm on Twitter, not going to call it X, at David Clair B. And this show was such a wonderful experience. Please welcome the one, the only, Jonathan Goldstein. Welcome to another episode of the Real Appreciation Podcast. I'm your host, David Clair-Bennett, and today I have with me someone who played a memorable role in many of our childhoods. You may have seen him in shows such as Grey's Anatomy and Fear the Walking Dead, but let's face it, he's best known as not only the #1 Bruce Winchell hater in the world, but as the dad, Walter Nichols, from the hit Nickelodeon series Drake and Josh. Please join me in welcoming the multi-talented actor and director, Jonathan Goldstein. Jonathan, this feels like a fever dream, dude. I cannot thank you enough for agreeing to come on and do this show.
It's my pleasure. It's great to be here.
Before we get into your time on Drake and Josh, because let's face it, I know a lot of people here will want to hear about that, rightfully so. But I think it's also very important to acknowledge your other work as well, such as directing, which is very interesting to read about because it brings me to my first question, Jonathan. And it actually may be a bit of trivia for fans of classic Nickelodeon shows because I don't think a lot of people know that you actually directed 2 episodes of the hit Nickelodeon series iCarly. How did that opportunity come about for you, and what was that experience like?
Well, it was kind of amazing. Dan Schneider was nice enough to. I had talked to him about the idea of directing, and I had never, of course, I'd never done any television. I directed plenty of theater, and he was like, "Well, why don't you start trailing some of our or shadowing? They call it in the business, some of our directors." So for about a year or so, I would show up on episodes of like I'd go to different sets and I'd trail some of the directors and I'd watch them work and I'd take notes. I'd learn how they would mark up their scripts and things like that. And then after it was about 8 months in, I think at one point we were walking back from an editing bay and Dan turned to me and he goes, "You're kind of going to graduate school on my dime, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." um, but I learned a real lot. A bunch of really generous directors, Steve Hafer and Weissman, a bunch of guys who were just really really nice and sort of helped me along a lot. The crew was also really key and helpful. Um, in sort of it was a little nerve wracking the first time because it was my first time. And Dan, as there's all this crap about Dan right now. Truth be told, he is very demanding and a perfectionist. So it made it really kind of like just scary in a way. It was like, oh my god, I got to get it perfect. But it went well. Everything was great, and everybody was really supportive. And then the second one, I felt I sort of like I got into the groove and I was
Mm-hmm.
ready to go. And it went really, really well. The cast was fantastic and a lovely time. And I think the lesson that I would share to anybody who's trying to do something like that or any kind of directing, I went to all the department heads and I would go to them. I said, "Hey, look, if hypothetical here, if like one of the idiot actors from the show was given the opportunity to direct and you had one bit of advice for him or them, what would it be?" And they all more or less really said the same thing, which is just know what you want. The clearer you can be, the easier it is for us to pick up on what it is you're looking for and to do a good job the more specific you are, the clearer you are, the easier it is for us to support the vision of the director, which was really, really nice to hear. And yeah, and it was great fun. It was really great. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, it does. Hey, I directed a feature film all by myself. I know the struggle. It's, oh yeah, Oaf
It's
is correct.
hurting. You're hurting cats. It's just
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things can go wrong. It's really kind of the same thing. I've done some film, directed some film stuff too, and like I said, lots of theater, and stuff can go sideways. I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss,
Yeah, that's fine. You can.
but yeah, shit goes sideways all the time, and being clear helps you also be cool in the moment and not flip out, because everybody's looking at you. What are we going to do? What are we going to do, boss?
A lot of pressure.
Yeah. And you have to be like, it's easy. We're going to do this. While
But
meanwhile, maybe on the inside, you're like, I don't know.
well, you've worked both as an actor, but also as a director, like you just said. How do you balance those 2 roles, and do you prefer one over the other?
I really love acting, and that's kind of always my sort of my go-to, what I really want to do. I'm also a musician, so I'm always looking for means of expression and ways to share.
Yeah.
Sort of like, when I was a kid, I had no idea how to put it, but communicating about and uh, about the human condition. What we all share is really interesting to me. As different as everybody is, we all really kind of want the same things. So I love to like parse that out. But directing appeals to the my one of my neuroses, and which is that I want to control everything. I'm sort of a super mellow, sloppy dude, but I secretly want to, make everybody do what I want them to do, and it never works out, of course. But in directing it, um, it sort of allows me to exercise that without being a douchebag, um, and for a purpose, like using that part of me for something positive. um, which is, telling a story. You pick a good story, and you try to rally a team around that idea, and yeah, so that's really fun. The question was, which do I prefer?
Yeah, if you had to choose, but I guess it's acting.
Yeah, I mean, the last movie I directed a short film, and I acted in it also. And I think I'm in the club, you know that of you should pick one or the other. I don't, it's a rule that I think is often broken, and often broken with great success, but there is something to it. I was It was a short film, and there wasn't a lot of money to complete it. So if there had been more money and more time for prep and all that, it would have been a lot easier to do both.
Yeah.
But when you're doing it on short, it's on the short, and all that, it was kind of hard having my attention split. And I think actually my acting suffered more um than anything else in that. So yeah, it's difficult. It's hard to balance that out. But then again, I would never say to anybody, if you're directing, you shouldn't act. I mean, it it depends upon what you're good at, and you know,
Yeah, what you're capable of.
yeah, if you're passionate, you're passionate.
Yeah, it reminds me of me. I told you I had to direct a feature film, but I also wrote it and I starred in it. So that was like everywhere. And I edited the whole thing. So it's just wild.
Listen, that's great. That's
Thank you.
fantastic. But it
Thank
was
you.
hard, right?
Yeah, the best part was Eric Roberts. So getting him was awesome.
Well, why didn't you call me? I'm kidding.
I am curious as to how you got the role of Walter.
I
Because if I
auditioned for it.
simple, short, and sweet. But no, I recall correctly. I believe, if I recall correctly, there was another actor who was up for the role and even shot a separate pilot episode. I'm not
Well,
sure.
yeah, that happened before I even showed up. Before
Okay.
what they had cast somebody else. I don't know the full story, and I don't really want to know the full story. They had cast somebody else, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out,
Hmm.
and so they went back. They sort of they shelved the episode, and they went back to the drawing board, and took about 8 months to do casting again. And I, got a call from my manager, and went in and auditioned and forgot about it. And then I guess about a month and a half later, I got the call to go to producers you know, for it. Maybe it was longer than a month and a half. And so I walked in, and at the time I was a waiter. I worked in a fancy restaurant in Hollywood, as you do. And I walked in, and I'm partial to beards, and like you said, I used to have long hair. I'm kind of that's sort of my normal look. And at that time, I had actually, I think for a play, I don't really remember, but I had, and yeah, I think I had done a play, so I had short hair, and I had shaved my beard.
Mhm.
So I go in, and I look, and this guy Dan Schneider is there, and I didn't really know Dan, other than I knew he'd been on a TV show in the 80s,
Mhm.
and I saw him, and he and his wife became regulars of mine in the restaurant.
Hmm.
And we'd always kibitz and have a good time, but I never really thought of it. And it had been a minute. And when I was that period of time when I was waiting on them, I had injured myself. So I was kind of shaggy looking. I had a beard and a lip.
Huh. Did you get hit by a
And
flying meatball?
I did not get hit by a flying meatball. In the
Little did you
chronology of my
know.
life, that happened later. But but yeah, so that's funny. But so I walk in standing upright and not limping, and clean shaven and with short hair,
Mhm.
and this guy from my restaurant is sitting there, and I go, Dan, and he looks at me and he goes, Yeah, who are you, Jonathan? And I was like, Yeah, and he goes, What are you doing here? And I said, You called me. I'm auditioning for your thing. What are you doing here? And he was like, Well, this is my thing. This is my show. I was like, Oh, well, great. And we joked around, had a couple of laughs. I read a couple of times. And, it was weird. I was in the waiting room and it was like all these guys who I'd seen play dads on TV. And I had never done that before. So I was pretty sure that I wasn't going to get it,
Right.
And then I was at a meeting at my restaurant about about how to teach waiters to be better waiters. And I forgot to turn my phone off, and my manager called me. And this was, I guess, about a month after that. And she was like, Hey, do you want to be on TV? And I was like, Call me later. Yeah, don't mess around with me. Of course I want to be on TV. What
Mhm.
this stupid question? And I about hung up on her, and she was like, No, 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 no. You got that Nickelodeon job. I was like, What? And then I quit my job right there. I had to go back. I shouldn't have quit right away. But my GM, my boss was sitting right next to me, and he was lovely. He was very happy, and it was really nice. But that's how it happened. I kind of got the role. They didn't know, like Dan and Lisa had always wanted to do something nice for me,
Mhm.
and they didn't. They got to do something nice for me, but they didn't know they were doing something nice for me till afterwards. It was like they decided to cast me, and then Dan showed Lisa the tape and was like, "See, this is. Do you know who that guy is?" And she's like, "No, some actor." And he goes, "That's Jonathan. That's our waiter. He's going to play the dad." And she was like, "Oh my god, we didn't even know." So it was very nice, and it turned out to be a lot of fun.
That's exciting, dude. That is crazy. And I'm glad you didn't get hit by another meatball.
I did not. Yeah, so far it's just been the one
No, all jokes aside, do you have any fun facts about the making of Drake and Josh that maybe some fans won't even know?
that some fans won't know. Um, uh, let's see. Something that Well, here's something that's fun. I think starting in the third, I think the third season, one of my favorite things to do, I live up near Pasadena at the time. And I used to drive to the Pasadena. Nobody knows this except unless you're friends of mine. I used to drive up to, before going into the studio, I'd go up to the aquatic center near the Rose Bowl, and I'd swim in the morning,
Yeah.
and then I'd get in my car and I'd drive to the studio, and then I'd do the show. And it was like, to me, it was like the pinnacle of Hollywood success. You know, mind you, I did not get rich making this TV show, and I was not driving a Rolls Royce. I was driving a little shitty car, but still, it was like this. I don't think I've ever shared this publicly. It was one of those, like, how can I make this feel like I'm a movie star? And for me, it was like getting up a little early and, putting over there and taking a swim, pretending it was my swimming pool,
Mhm.
and and then going into the studio. I get that was season 3, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's really it. I mean, there was a lot of hanging out. I spent a lot of time when Miranda was a kid on the show. Obviously, we spent a lot of time hanging out. Me and her mom, because her dad was always at work. Although we'd go see movies uh,
At the
and
premiere,
stuff.
right?
Not at the premiere, but at right down the street. And Drake and I used to go record. We used to go. I go to Amoeba Records, which used to be down the street from the studio, and buy records. and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. It was a great time. Uh, Contrary to all the stuff that you've heard as of late. Yeah.
Well, it seems like every few years, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. Ever since the show ended in '07, there's always been some sort of buzz about a possible reunion or reboot. Let's say, let's say you get the call. All right, Jonathan, you get the call. They want you back as Walter. Nearly 20 years later, would there be any interest in potentially reprising a role again? And what do you think Walter Nichols would be up to right now? Besides having better hair than Bruce Winchell. Go ahead.
Well, that was a question that Drake and I a couple of years ago addressed. But I think where is Walter now? I mean, if we're sticking to the script, I think Walter and Audrey, the mom, are still happily and blissful, and because he's such, Walter is such a lovable idiot, and so blissfully unaware of anything. I think they're still happily married and doing their thing, and the boys are the boys are off and like probably started their own families, and
Yeah.
Megan is probably some kind
In
of like
prison.
no, absolutely not. She might have she might be a crook, but she's somehow taking over the world. She's in the midst of
Right.
taking over. And But yeah, I would do it. I do it, depending, depends how much money they offer. I'm kidding. I would love to do it mostly because, and I think you'd appreciate this as someone who's, in the game and an actor. And one of the things you dream of as an actor, once you sort of get past the sort of bullshitty stuff of like, I want to be rich and famous. I want to have all the women or all the men. I want to have all the money. But once you get past that, and one of the impulses of being an actor is the idea of sharing and telling stories, right? And I don't mean to be glib about it, but I think that's the real joy. And to have been lucky enough to play a character that people recognize to a certain,
Hmm.
it is still a thing. People will come up to me and say, "Oh my God, you made my childhood," and I think that that's probably not true, but I think there's truth in the
There's
statement.
a little
And
truth. You played a part.
yeah, absolutely.
Literally.
And I had an experience when I was a kid. I met at a camp. One of my friend's fathers was on a TV show. He was on the Dick Van Dyke Show, and he was wonderful. And I said to him, "You were my favorite on that show." And he looked at me like I was an idiot because I mean, it's an odd thing to say, but I was always tickled by him. And he was like, "Nah, you love Dick, you love Mary Tyler Moore, you love those, come on." And it always bothered me because I was like, "No, I'm really genuinely like you." And he wasn't being rude, he wasn't being dismissive or anything like that. But I sort of took it that way, and it stuck with me. And many years later, when I was lucky enough to, get all this early on, somebody said that to me, and I dismissed them, and it sort of stopped me. I was like, wait, no, this kid's being honest. And having that, and I had to sort of regroup and apologize, and having that sort of magic power where you affect people like that is the gig. So if I could bring Walter back and make people happy, holy crap, what a gift! I would love that. That to me is the big thing. Um, Especially because it's an episodic thing. There was no real end to it.
Hmm.
Like if it had been closed off and the story had been complete, you know what I mean? I don't want to mess with that.
Hmm.
But because it was open ended, it would be wonderful. But sadly, I don't think that's ever going to happen.
It's a shame because I would do anything in the world to hear you say she had a lazy eye. I quote
I
that
mean,
once a
I
week.
can do it if you want.
Please, for the pod, please do it.
She had a lazy eye. Sorry.
Dreams
Anyway,
come true.
I tried my best.
So when I go to your IMDb page, I told you we were going to go back to your music career. And it says you started a band in 1990 called Music Head, as well as being a lead singer in several New York bands. I had no idea you were a singer. Any plans to ever get the band back together and sing a new song, would you?
Yes, actually, it's funny you should say that. During the pandemic, I was playing, and right afterwards, and when things started opening up, I was in a band. I started with some friends, a joke band in college.
Mhm.
And after we had gotten out of, or after I got out of college, some of the guys approached me from the band and they were like, let's do a real band. And so I was like, really? Do you guys really want to? And they were like, yeah. So, we'd played a party or two as this joke band. And so we started playing and it became a thing. The band is called the Shakers. And we ended up, it was at our height, we were like a big band with horn section and backup singers, and we our first real performance was at a famous club in New York that it sadly is no longer there, called CBGB's,
Mhm.
and we packed the place, and it was amazing. It was super duper fun. Of course, they wanted us to come play again because they thought we were like the next big thing because we were NYU students.
Mhm.
So all our friends showed up, and it was such a big band. Then, of course, the next time we played, nobody showed up, and they're like, "Oh, I guess it isn't the Rolling Stones." But we've been playing on and off for years and years and years and years, and um, uh, a bunch of my buddies uh, were all out in LA at the same time from the band, and most of us were here. I had come out here and started another band, and then I got my one of my writing partners and guitar. We all got together and we started playing, and we've been playing on and off for fun for years now. And I stopped playing about 2 years ago. I just didn't want to play anymore. It was like I didn't want to ask people to do anything anymore. I didn't want to play. I just had lost it. And but I'm still acting, and of course I get the odd audition for musicals.
Mhm.
And a few months ago, I got this audition for a musical, and I couldn't do it. My voice was gone.
Mhm.
And it was shot. And because I'm an old fart now. For you youngsters out there, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that becomes more and more of a thing the older you get. Your body loses stuff. And I realized this thing that I love, music and singing, I had not paid attention to it. And like a friend in The Sims, the green jewel had turned gray, and I had just about killed my voice. So I've been starting to play again and sing again, and I'm hoping by September-ish, we're gonna get the band back together and start playing out. And I might, maybe, I don't know. I hate making promises, but we might start releasing music. I'm always iffy about that.
Mhm.
Uh, but um, but yeah. So as a matter of fact, I just saw Drake play. He was just in LA. I like his new music a lot.
Me
I mean, I
too.
like the old stuff too, but this new album I really like.
Yeah, like I just also wanted to take the time to get a little personal here and tell you that seriously, Jonathan, you've had such a profound impact on me, not just as a fan, but also in my professional journey, even as a screenwriter. And I wanted to share something with you that reflects my deep admiration for your time on the show, Drake and Josh. I've actually, I told you off camera that I've been working on this family friendly comedy series spec that we talked about for a while now. And I'm serious. It's literally just a love letter to Drake and Josh. The humor, the style alone. So I just want to take time to say thank you for being such a big part of not only my childhood, but many others as well. And I'm here to talk about gratitude and appreciation. And I'm appreciating you right now.
Thank you so much. That's really
Yeah,
nice of
man.
you. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me.
Yes. And listen, the main goal of this podcast has always been to highlight the power of both gratitude and appreciation and making a positive impact on others as well. And also to promote awareness of the significance of something very important to me, which is mental health. And this leads me to an essential daily part of my routine, being that I make it an absolute priority to express gratitude. Every day when I wake up, I say three things I'm grateful for. And before I go to bed, I say three things I'm grateful for. I encourage absolutely everybody to adapt this practice, and I promise it can make a huge difference. I wanted to ask you, Jonathan, what are three things that you are grateful for?
Oh gosh. Well, the first thing that comes to mind, where is she? Well, no, my friends. I have really wonderful and supportive friends that have, that I've grown up with and that have been there for me. Um, so that I'm really thankful for. I have a very close, tight group of friends. Some who were friends when I was a child, who there were spaces between, you know, our friendship, but every, in the last 15 years or so, people have shown up and rekindled those friendships, and mean the world to me. And friends of mine, like I'm at a friend's house right now. He and I were buddies in college, and I've known his wife since like right after that, and then watched his kids grow up, and it's been, well, they're still growing, but that stuff is like everything. It's so wonderful. I'm thankful for my family. As big a pain in the ass as they can be, I'm really grateful for them. Right now I'm sort of in the middle of losing my father, which is really tough. But the way my stepsisters and my sister and my stepmom have sort of coalesced is beautiful. My sister is, my mother is still alive, thank God, and my sister takes care of her, and I try to help her out as best I can with all of that. My niece is pregnant right now.
Oh,
She
cool.
married a wonderful guy a couple of years ago, so everything, it's really great. I had a bunch of cousins that I was estranged from for years, who recently we've all sort of started getting back in touch. And I just was back east and spent like a weekend on Shelter Island with all of my cousins that I have only sort of known, and we've all gotten together and had a great time. So, I mean, as cliched as it is, I'm very grateful for my friends and my family. Um, a third thing is, and I hate to be cute, but I'm so grateful for my dog. I love my dog, and having a pet is such a great thing because it allows you the stewardship. I think is really important. Taking care of something, putting something's uh, um, needs in front of your own. Just the as a human being, to have to keep something else alive and being responsible for something else, I think is an act of is a really important thing to do. Um, so yeah, how was that? That was pretty good.
As we wind down here, we have a fun thing we like to do here on the Real Appreciation Podcast called Real Talk. So here's the deal. It can be twofold. Sometimes a departing guest will leave a question for the next interviewee. Other times, a listener like you listening to the show right now might submit a question through email at realappreciation@gmail.com. A listener sends in and asks, who is someone in your life that you deeply appreciate, and why do they matter to you? You may have just answered this, but
I think I kind of just covered that.
yeah,
Give me
yeah.
another one, man.
I don't. Ah,
Uh-oh. In
I don't
that
have
big
a
old
script. I
journal.
need a script.
Give me one from the
I
week
don't have any
before,
more. We
man.
just started the show.
Okay. Let me see. Maybe
What's
I
your
can
favorite
give you a
color? Quick.
green. It's
Uh,
the earth. I love the color of. I love earth tones. That's my jam. I like that. That's one of the reasons. I like to drive. I like to travel. I like to take road trips.
oh, me
And
too.
one of the things I love is, especially in this country, the different kinds of green that you can see. That I love that.
So, what is your question for the next guest?
What's your problem? No. What's
All right.
Let's see. Wait. No. Let me give
I'm
you a
just
better
kidding.
one. Let me give you a better one. Who was the most positive influence on your path, on your present path?
Wow,
Come here.
that was so
And
good.
also, speaking of appreciating, here's Martha.
Martha? What's up,
That's
Martha?
Martha.
You want to
That's
come on for part two, Martha?
that's my girl. I'm very appreciative of her, right? Give me a kiss. Thank you.
Man, this was fun, dude. Tell us anything you may have to promote or anything you may have coming up, and tell us where everybody can find you.
Well, everybody can find me on the Instagram, Jonathan L. Goldstein. Uh, and I'm trying to get good at it. I've got all this footage that I've taken and all this stuff, but I'm kind of not a recluse, but I'm kind of private. So, like, I find it very difficult to share my life on Instagram, even stuff curated just for Instagram, which I've got a ton of stuff that I've done, and I don't want. It's just like, I don't want to do it. But you can find me on Instagram there. Please come on board. Maybe I'll do more if more people show up. And maybe with my music coming out, maybe I'll do more of that. What else? What was the question? What the heck did you ask me?
And if you had anything else to promote.
Promoting right now, I don't have. I mean, I'm working on some projects that nobody's gonna see yet, or so a lot of stuff is in its infancy. Sadly, the show business has slowed down considerably. So I haven't been auditioning all that much lately. Sadly, there's not a lot of stuff out there. So right now I've got nothing. I'm teaching. I teach acting. So if you're interested in that, you can, hit me up on the old Instagram. I might start teaching classes. I don't know. I have to talk to there's this space that's interested in working with me. If that was to happen, I'd post that on Instagram too. I'm going to Australia in a couple of weeks to do some teaching, so that'll be fun. So if you're Australian and you're watching, I'll see you in Australia.
I appreciate you so much, Jonathan. I'm giving the 1 minute countdown. I'm David Clair-Bennett, and he's Jonathan Goldstein. Say it again.
She had a lazy eye.
Follow Jonathan on the socials. I'll list them in the description below. Follow me on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. At David Clair B. This is the Real Appreciation Podcast, and we are out. Man, that was so good. That was a lot of fun. So far, I have to say that my interview with Jonathan Goldstein has to be the best interview I've done and my favorite interview I've ever done so far. And I know that we could have talked for another hour at the least. He is such a great storyteller and just an overall wonderful human being. We are doing big things here on Real Appreciation, and we're only on our second episode. Tag us. He's on Instagram at Jonathan L. Goldstein. I'm on Twitter at David Clair B. But before we head out of here, let's take a moment to reflect on the power of gratitude with an infamous quote. And out of all days to use this one, I had to pick an incredible quote from the woman Josh once ran over with his car, Oprah Winfrey, who famously said, "Be thankful for what you have. You'll end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never, ever have enough." Inspiring words that reminds us of the profound impact that gratitude can have on our everyday lives. Please share this episode with someone who loves Drake and Josh. Stay grateful, protect your mental health, and remember that you matter. We will see you next Friday on a brand new episode of Real Appreciation. Subscribe to the podcast if you're not already. Please leave us a 5-star review and snap a screenshot and tag us. Positivity wins again. Thanks, guys.